It was the early 2000s when Bob and Kelly had to relocate due to Kelly finding new work. The family wasn't too stoked about it as they had been living in Maine for years, and their new location was more than a stone's throw away. It was in Elmira, Michigan. So they would take their daughter, who was really reluctant because she was in the last 2 weeks of her senior year. See, recently, Bob had been injured at work very badly, hurting his back, and shortly after, Kelly had lost her job, so they had to relocate now. So that's how they wound up in Michigan. Kelly's field was specified, so jobs were scarce. The only silver lining of it all is the farm they found, cheap. It came with lots of land and was surrounded by woods. So with the help of their son Sean, who was already out of the house, they were able to get everything moved in 1 day. So as they were finishing up, Bob tried to sneak in his last item, his rifles. That's when Kelly said, "Nope, not in the house, put them in the barn." So reluctantly he does and locks them up. After getting everything moved in, night was falling quickly, so Bob and Kelly went out on the back porch to listen to some music and have a drink. That's when Bob would notice something odd in the woods across the field. Kelly, look." Kelly would glance over and that's when she saw it. Who is it? I don't know, I'm not sure. What they were looking at, some very strange acting lights. They instantly knew those lights were not normal. They would dim and then brighten, dim and then brighten. They continued this for a while. Bob would end up calling his son out. "Sean, come take a look at this." Sean would come out and glance at them. What are they? Only one way to find out, Bob says. Let's go. They grab their flashlight and make their way over there. The lights would continue as they approached until suddenly, snap, Sean stepped on a twig. "Shh," his dad said. That's when the lights went out. After that, I felt like I was being watched. Immediately, something crashed in the brush nearby. "What was that?" Sean said. "What was that?" said Sean. "Shh," his dad said. "Don't move." They stood very still, and that's when Bob said he could see a silhouette. It stood just 20 feet to their left, and though Bob had his flashlight, he didn't want to make any sudden movements. He felt like whatever it was very powerful, and it would attack him in seconds. So they stood there froze for what seemed like an eternity, but really it was less than a minute. When suddenly, he heard what he thought was a low bear growl. See, Bob and his family were avid hunters. They had hunted everything you can think of that you can legally hunt. So he was very familiar with the sounds of nature. After he heard the growl, whatever it was, swiftly just took off. Its movement, silent and fast. After this, he would waste no time getting him and his son out of the woods, chalking it up to a simple animal encounter. The next day rolls around, but the previous night is still weighing heavily on Bob's mind. Their son Sean would end up heading back to Maine. No sooner did he leave, the daughter's boyfriend would show up for the day as he was visiting some family in Michigan. They figured it would help Liz adjust to the new conditions. So her and her boyfriend would decide to take a walk through the woods that day. They had their 2 dogs with them. They were beagles. They would eventually let them off their chains to run, but they'd get way ahead. And when they finally caught up to them, they'd find them nosing around a very large den. This den was like nothing they had ever seen. After grabbing the dogs and putting their leashes on so they wouldn't go down there, her boyfriend would continue checking it out. You could see where it almost looked man-made, where something had used their hands and dug in the dirt around the entrance. "That gives me the creeps," said Liz. "Let's get out of here." "Alright, that thing is crazy." As soon as they would turn around, something in the den. Later that night, Liz's boyfriend goes home. Bob and Kelly do their usual thing, sit on the back porch and drink a few beers. But there was something different about that evening. A light haze of fog had settled in over the pastures, and Kelly had noticed something odd. "Hey Bob, do you hear anything?" "No, I don't. Why?" "Well, isn't that kind of weird? Now that you say that, you're right. I haven't heard anything at all tonight. It's very, very silent." They weren't hearing the usual racket provided by nature after dark. The frogs, the crickets, or the occasional bird. So Kelly, who has a spotlight, stands up and starts shining over the fields. "Wait a second, Bob, do you see that?" Bob looks up. "What are you looking at?" "I don't know, do you see that right there?" Bob kind of strains his eyes, and suddenly, he grabs Kelly. "We need to go inside." "What do you mean? What's wrong? What?" "Kelly, we need to go inside now." "Stop, you're scaring me." "What has gotten into you? Look!" She quickly shined her light around the yard. "Oh my God, did you see that? There was 2 of them." That's when, just as they're getting ready to go inside, they shine the field. "Oh my God, there's 3 more." There was a total of 5 of them. And whatever they were fierce. They looked as if they could stand on 2 feet, and they had glowing yellow eyes. It was obvious they were on a mission. They were angry. "Get inside now!" And they storm inside and slam the door. quickly locking it. They can't believe what they just saw. What the fuck were those? I don't know. I have no idea. They both had a really good idea, but they didn't want to say because they had never believed they existed before. Most people wouldn't, as they were only stories of folklore and movies. After this, they immediately called the cops. But unfortunately, the cops wouldn't really get their description. They would just blow them off, almost acting as if they knew. They told them to lock the house and stay put. They quickly come to the realization that they were alone. They were going to have to figure this out themselves. And of course, she didn't want the guns in the house, so they had no guns. So Bob, being the father, wanted to protect his family, but was helpless. Kelly would go upstairs and check on their daughter. She decided it would be best to leave her sleeping soundly and shut her window. Bob was downstairs looking out the windows, and he could see them huddled in a group, almost ceremoniously. But they were probably over 100 yards off into the field. So although crippled, Bob got a bright idea. And although Kelly told him not to do this, he was going to make a break for his truck. So he quietly opens the front door and sneaks outside. He limps to the truck, wincing in pain, but he gets there. As soon as he starts fumbling his keys to get the door unlocked, a motion light right over the truck kicks on. He knew instantly. The beast stands up and starts making his way towards him. He fumbles his keys that much faster, until finally he drops them. He just stops. He can literally feel his breath behind him. He turns around and is stunned by what he sees. It was looking him in the eye, just wanting to attack. He couldn't really explain what it was, but all he knows is it looked like a werewolf. He just stood there froze, waiting to meet his maker. When the beast would go to reach over the fence that was in between them, as soon as his hand touched the light, he pulls it back and growls. Then it runs off. He sees this as his opportunity, and Bob makes a break for the house. Gets in and slams the door. Kelly comes downstairs and yells at him. "What were you doing?" "I thought I could make a break for the vehicle." "Don't do that again." He would try to make another break for the guns later. With no success, they end up surrounding him. After Bob would make a break for the guns unsuccessfully, they had no more options. They grabbed every weapon in the house, went and hunkered down in one room, and laid in bed, waiting, hoping to God they weren't going to break in the house. After they laid down, they could hear the footsteps all over the roof. When daylight broke, everything stopped. Apparently, that weekend there were UFO sightings and strange lights reported all over the place. And dozens of what people said looked like werewolf sightings. But it was odd, there was no deaths. It's almost as if they just wanted to let them know, yes, we're here, but you stick to yourself and we'll stick to ourselves. Basically, just stay away from our dens. As I said, these are simply witness statements. If you find them credible, you do. Either way, I hope y'all enjoyed the story, and I hope you come back for more. Also, sub my YouTube, link in the bio. Thanks y'all, couldn't do without you, gear coming soon.